We post that first video on TikTok and it gets 1.4 million views. I wish somebody had told me the amount of mistakes I was gonna make early on because I thought everything had to be perfect. We didn't have a bank account. We didn't have QuickBooks set up for payroll. We had 80 t-shirts, a press, and a couple of pieces of transfer paper and a TikTok account. That was quite literally it. I'm trying to think if I want to involve the story of the bus.
I don't know the story of the bus. Are you comfortable?
I'm comfortable.
Great. All right. Well, Hayden, thank you so much for being here today.
Happy to be here.
You drove all the way down from Rockford just for this podcast. Dude, you and I go way back, and I was there witnessing from the outside some of the early days of Nice Shirt Thanks. But I want to hear it from you so many years later. What has it been, like 5 years?
Had her 4th birthday last 2 weeks ago.
Nice. So tell me, one, what is Nice Shirt Thanks now? And then what was Nice Shirt Thanks 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm. So Nice Shirt Thanks is a custom comedic clothing brand, I guess. So the idea is simple. You send us an idea of what you want on a shirt, and then we'll design it. We'll send it back to you. It's a complete surprise until it gets to you. That was kind of the foundational idea of it. But now we've kind of grown into a few more products where you can create your own designs or you can shop our pre-curated gallery. So that's the basic premise of what Nice Shirt Thanks is. Mm-hmm. And then are you wanting me to just go back?
Yeah, I mean, tell me, because I remember it was wild, like the first couple months of Nice Shirt Thanks. You thought you were going to be selling 2 shirts a day. Mm-hmm. So what happened? Bear
with me, because when I first started this, I was telling the story over and over and I was locked in. So I'm going to not be as smooth with it. Okay. I guess Nice Shirt Thanks very much ties into my testimony, so I'm going to go back to senior year of high school.
You're going to go back to, 4 BC. Yep. Jesus is born in Nazareth. Or Bethlehem, excuse me.
Senior year of high school, I'm 18 years old. I want to go into the military, but I cannot because I hurt my back playing football. And so I'm like, all right. They give me a steroid injection. They're like, you can go to college. So I go to college. I'm playing basketball there. I'm in the ROTC program because I want to get out and go join the military afterwards. Doing business admin is my major because that seemed to align most with leadership. Fast forward, fracture the other side of my spine, and then I can't go into the military anymore, and I can't play basketball. Super bummed out.
How did you fracture your spine?
So the little pars, each in your discs, fractured the right side playing football in high school, and then the left side during basketball. No idea when, but we went and got a X-ray, and then the other side was fractured. So all right, no more of that. So I was super bummed out because I didn't know what I wanted to do then. Couldn't play basketball. I was kind of bedbound for 8 months. That was awful. But when you're bedbound for that long, the only thing you can really do is read. So I started reading after I was done feeling bad for myself after a while. Read everything I could from business to philosophy to politics to theology, but the most important thing was reading my Bible. So I say that my entire life I believed in God and I believed in Jesus Christ, but it wasn't until that moment that I started walking with him. So that's, 18 years old. And then I realized, hey, I've got to bear my cross somehow. So I start finding what responsibility can I take upon myself in the moment. So I learned guitar. After about 3 months, maybe I had 4 chords down, and I was helping my brother up on stage lead worship at church. That was awesome. I realized that there were so many people that were pouring into me at that time that I kind of wanted to pour into others. So I applied for an RA gig at Olivet, got that. That was awesome. Best job in the world. Second best job in the world. And then, so did that, and then, sophomore year rolls around, still kind of trying to figure out what it is I'm called to, what God's wanting me to do as I'm taking these things upon myself. And then junior year, my friends start going into the military, and they're all going off, becoming Army Rangers, what have you, living what I wanted to do. And I'm like, so I'm kind of bummed out about that. COVID happens, so kind of I was back-to-back quarantines, which is like a whole month of being stuck in my room, and I'm like, I have nothing to do. So I'm like, hey, I want to start a business. I'm trying to think if I want to involve the story of the bus, which...
I don't know the story of the bus.
So I was texting my friends from back home, and during this time I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos where people were converting buses into like RVs and traveling across the country. So I kept sending it to my friends back home, like, hey, we should do this. And they're like, all right, then we got to make some money. I'm like, all right, what's the best way to do that? And then they're like, well, we should start a business. So that's kind of where the idea, after a culmination of like, oh, well, we can sell stuff on the internet, we can design shirts and sell it, or they can send us what they want a shirt and we'll design and send it to, like, oh, that's it. And then I was talking with my buddy Mason, my partner, and I'm just trying to figure out, I'm like, well, the premise of this, I just want to be walking down the street and somebody says, nice shirt, thanks. We just walk in, like, wait, that's it. And Mason gets all excited. I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. So we call it Nice Shirt Thanks. And yeah, as I said earlier, the premise is you tell us what you want on a shirt. We'll design it, send it back to you, complete surprise, just fun little gimmick gift. And so we post the video on YouTube. By the way, Mason is like a wizard with social media, so talented at it. And he had already amassed a cult following of like 500,000, maybe 600,000 people on the internet, all called him Uncle Mason. They loved him to death. So he was marketing, he was brilliant with it. So we get everything set up. I'm sending everything back home. We're building the website, just kind of getting the basics figured out. And then we post that first video on TikTok, and it gets 1.4 million views. And we'd only had like 80 shirts or something like that we had bought beforehand. Like I was telling you earlier, I was hoping to sell maybe 2 or 3 shirts a day, and I would have been super happy. Just something to do while I was bored at college. Post that first video, 1.4 million views, and
which doesn't happen, by the way. Like, that's not like I help a lot of people with media. That's, you're gonna get 200 views, and then you like get 500, and we'll like slowly scale you up 2,000, and then 20,000. Like, that's kind of how that works now.
Oh, 100%. And this was also in the early days of TikTok, so it was a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And there weren't any other businesses really on the app at that time. Now there's businesses everywhere on the app, but we were one of the first businesses on the app. 1.4 million views, sell out in like 8 hours, and then that's right when I got home for winter break. So that entire winter break was like trying to build a plane as we were flying it. It was just off to the races. Mason and I were running around not knowing what to do at all, just figuring it out as we were going. And yeah, that's ever since then, it's been still just as fun as day one.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So when you were in the middle of that, like, I have been overwhelmed several times where I'm at max capacity, I'm hiring out other contractors or like editors and videographers, and it sucks. So, like, how do you handle that initially back in, 2020 or whatever? Like, how do you do that?
I didn't handle it well.
Yeah.
That was a huge learning process of, I would say, yeah, I was super emotionally invested, and so every small inconvenience was the biggest upset in the world. And so just over time, learning that I had to learn from my mistakes rather than just like, expect mistakes and then recognize that your customers or your clients are going to be your best consultants. And so you've got to learn from them. And then also, it was awesome because I was doing it with my friends. Phenomenal. I was doing it with my family. My dad was helping out with accounting. My sister was doing PR. Brother was designing. Cousin Alan was doing all the IT. And so it was like a family business all put into one. And then getting to do it with my best friends as well. That was awesome. So I would say, yeah, just learning to have a growth mindset through it all was probably trying to think of how to word it. That was probably the most beneficial part early on, to recognize that mistakes were going to happen, but it was just failing fast and failing forward.
Yeah. No, I think about that a lot. I've described my career as falling up the stairs, where it's I'm going up, I'm getting to the next level, and I'm falling the entire way, but it's going upward, where it's like I just am rolling, and like, that's not how falling works. But yet I'm tripping, I'm stumbling, and then I'm like, I meant to do that as I like, kind of crawl up the stairs. Like, I'm faster this way. And it's like, no, running up the stairs or skipping steps is how you go up the stairs. But that's not been my trajectory, is skipping steps. It's been staying on steps and like rolling upwards, which is just so uncomfortable. But yeah, I look back at so many seasons where it was like I didn't know that I needed to learn this in order to get to that next level. But through falling, I'm like really close to the carpet or really close to all this stuff. And it's like, that's how I learned it. And so When you say that you were not as like emotionally prepared, how do you feel like you were able to? Because it's like that's a huge thing to struggle with, and I still struggle with it today, even about non-business things. And how do you feel like you were able to at that time, like rectify that? Because when emotions are high, it's hard to think clear. And then what do you think you would do now?
I would say right before I started it, I deleted all social media because I didn't want to get my identity tied up in it again, because I put my identity in something else before, and then that fell through, and that really hurt. And so I was like, recognizing that, all right, my identity has to be in Christ first and foremost, and I was not good at that. Even after like, all right, going to delete all social media. I'm not going to put my face on social media. I'm just going to run operations. And then also, I would say recognizing that when I messed up, my friends who I was working with continuously gave me grace over and over again, and my family members. And so that was super helpful. I would say those are the biggest ones.
Well, then what would you say now? Like, what do you do when things happen now based off of all of the last several years, even going back maybe even further? What do you do now when things emotionally get heated?
In what sense? Like personally in the business or in relationships?
I guess either, because we're not able to do business just solely by ourselves. So like my housemates, they see me. And when I get a bad email or I get someone who is frustrated about something and I know I have to fix it, it's my responsibility and I'm going to be up late, or I thought things were fine, or an editor didn't get back to me as fast, and now everyone's like, hey, where's that video? I'm like, I don't know. Let me figure that out. And I don't handle that as well as I would like. I don't even know what handling it well looks like, but I do know that the relationships I have with people, like, they're a part of that, even if I'm not paying them. They're just a part of my life. So I don't think I separate it. So what do you do right now?
That's the thing that I'm still learning. I was just having this conversation with my dad, is that it's so easy for me to get all fired up, and then I'll think, I'm like, all right, I know what 60-year-old Hayden's advice is going to be to me right now. It's like, calm down, everything's going to work out. You don't have to get so, like, if I was to look back at starting Nice Shirt Thanks, all the inconveniences that I ran into, such small problems, and I made them way bigger deals than they actually are. So recognizing that it's not the end of the world, that I'm going to figure it out, and that I've gotten through it before. And so I would say that's the biggest thing, is just recognizing that in the moment I'm probably going to be much more emotional about it than the long term. I'm recognizing that I'm probably, hopefully, getting better at being less emotionally attached to the problem, just recognizing that business is solving problems. And so I've got to fall in love with the problem and nothing else.
Jeez. All right. Piercing me. It's like, yeah, everything that, like, there are so many minor things that 60-year-old AJ or even 35-year-old AJ is going to look back and go, you're an idiot. And there's not like, it's not me being hard on myself. I get so annoyed when people say, oh, you're being too hard on yourself. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know. Like, the only times that I've been able to look back on my life and been satisfied is when I held myself to a high standard. And it is through holding yourself to a high standard that I think you're able to realize that these things don't matter. They matter to low standard people, where it's like, oh, we've got silverware in the drain, not in the sink, in the drain. We have a garbage disposal. We're going to destroy it, and these spoons and knives. And it's like, that doesn't matter. Let's say you do destroy your garbage disposal. That'd suck. It doesn't matter. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't want to spend the money, and neither do any of my housemates, but like, we're good. We're fine. Why would I care? I'm not going to remember that and if I do, I'm going to laugh. Be like, oh, you remember that time that I left stuff at this person, like, and again, that's not even with business. That's just life. There's so many things even more with business where I'm going to laugh. Like, some of my most stressful times in business, I laugh at, and I'm like, I remember working on that project. And I had a terrible experience with a company, when I was starting out. A lot of my early clients were amazing, like unbelievable, and I didn't realize how much I could do for a company and make money doing it. Videos was always a hobby. It was just something I did for fun. And then someone said, hey, can I pay you to do this thing for my business? And I was like, sure. Like I didn't feel comfortable doing it. And he was always like, yeah, like, just bill me, what it's worth. I'm like, I do this for free. And, but I had a really terrible experience. And it was one of the most stressful times of my life outside of like romantic relationships. It was like the most stressful business experience I've ever had. And I kept like having other people reread their emails and reread my emails and be like, does this sound good? And it was just like, I could give so many stories of like things that this should have taken a week to do. And it took us maybe 4 months. And I did not charge them much more than I should have, but I also just should have fired them sooner. And like, I have so many lessons that I learned from that. And I told my mother after this was all finished, I said, I didn't make a lot of money off of this project, but this is going to help save me hundreds of hours. And it's going to help me make, God willing, millions of dollars over the course of my career. Like this one experience. It was so awful. And I don't know if they were satisfied by the end of it. I try and make sure everyone's happy. Like I don't do this now because I've rectified it, but that's the thing. It's like I continue to look back. But there was one woman I was working with. She was a great woman, but she didn't like the way that her makeup looked during one of our shoots. And I said, screw it. Well, let's do it again. The whole thing. We did the whole thing again. And now I have a lint roller, I have mirrors, and like all of these things where it's like, I want you to look good. But and it bothered me. I'm like, you don't think you look good? Like, I'm not hitting on her, but like, I'm like, I think you look great. And it's like, you don't like that? All right, well, we're going to do it again. And it's like now, like I never do that again because I have a lint roller and have mirrors. And it's like, oh, do you want to go like check? This is how you look. Because that's important for me. I want them to feel like they look good. They're going to be looking at this more intently than any of their customers. So they got to look good. But I've learned so much through all of those really terrible experiences. And I don't know how many millions of dollars I'm going to make over my career. But I know that the principle is there of I learned and this sucked. And I laugh at it now, even though I'm sure I'm going to grow gray hair much sooner than I would have if I did not. And when do you think you're going to turn gray?
I'm balding way too fast for that to be a concern.
Okay. Thankfully, it's the mother's father that has the hair gene.
Then I'm cooked.
Well, you're tall, so you still got something.
That's all right. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I'm 5'11" and a quarter or whatever, so it's like I have to round up 6 foot. So I'm a quarter inch, or I'm 3/4 inch short, or whatever, as all the TikTok gals say. I don't make the cut, but yeah, man, this is something that I love about entrepreneurship, and I'd love to hear what you think about this. Is like all of these experiences, they work on us, I think, way more than we are working on the business. Like I've grown so.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, I've grown so much more in the last couple of years than I have in my entire life just by doing this and having to figure out how to make things happen. So I'm curious, like, how do you feel like you've grown, besides the emotional thing, which we've just talked about a little bit, but like, how do you feel like you've grown working on Nice Shirt Thanks and all the other opportunities that you have had?
Every time, I would say, all right, I'll say what I'm learning right now.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this is tightening in on my scope of what it is I'm working on. I always thought that I could take on 8 projects all on myself and they were all going to be a success. And then I can't get a single one of them done. So what I've been doing recently, which has been really helpful, is 2 things. I've only got 2 things that I'm worrying about at a time, 2 projects I'm worrying about at a time. And if that's 3 things I'm going to accomplish to get those 2 things done a day, that's a win in my book. So I think, and also extending the timeline on when I have to get everything done.
Which is hard to do as an entrepreneur. Because I think back to when Elon bought Twitter and he had that email exchange. He said, what did you get done this week? And I think about that all the time, where it's like, what did you get done this week? And in the tech world, which I'm not in, like things take months. It's like, what did you get done this week? So I guess we're not Elon,
no,
for sure. But what does that look like practically as far as like I don't know if you said giving yourself grace. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's just being realistic on prioritizing what's most essential for the company, and then being very realistic on what's a good timeline in order to get this done. So often I feel like I've got to get Nice Shirt Thanks has to be at this point by the end of the year, and that's just not feasible by any means. And so being realistic is super difficult, especially when I'm always getting fired up on what I think the next project is and what it can be. Being realistic on what it is we're going to get done, what we can scale to, and then prioritizing the most important things. I would say that's the one thing I'm having to learn right now more so than anything else.
Do you feel like it's because you're prioritizing just the wrong things, or is it too many things, or both?
I think it's both. I think not worrying about I don't know, trying to do this without going too much into the details of like current things that I can
tell every listener to sign an NDA.
Well, no, I think when it comes to Nice Shirt Thanks, prioritization and then limiting what it is I'm working on so I can get focused, because I get overwhelmed. I'm so emotional. I get overwhelmed by the big picture all too often. But when it comes to personally, which is very tied into what I'm learning from Nice Shirt Thanks, like goes into my walk with Christ, is also, we were just talking about, it's like, I have to surrender every single morning. I have to surrender to Christ at all hours of the day and not being so controlling, because it's so easy for me to wake up and feel, I've got to get these things done. I've got to accomplish this and what have you. But kind of like we were talking about those 5-minute intervals, just extending that to be surrendering to Christ at all hours of the day. I think that's something that I'm having to work on.
Because it's easy. Like, it's really hard for me to sin when I'm in the middle of church and I'm just surrounded by other people, and it's like I'm not even thinking about anything else. And if I am, it's so easy to like just bring my mind back to where I am. And so the idea is extending those like 5 minutes of you like reading your Bible in the morning or whatever. And like literally this morning, one habit that I have is regardless of how many times I hit the snooze, I like to, the first thing I do when I'm out of bed is I get on my knees and I pray the Lord's Prayer before a crucifix. And when I don't do that, it's like something's off. Not that like I'm very like superstitious about it, but I'm like, something doesn't feel right. And it's like, oh yeah, I haven't said the words of our God. And like there's something beautiful about doing that. And some mornings, boy oh boy, like I don't fall back asleep when I'm praying these things, but like even like this morning, I'm like, I think I said, and lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. And then I like kind of stopped. I'm like, did I say that last part again? And I said it twice. And so sometimes like I'll tell God, I'm like, I'll do this again in an hour. But like just by doing that, like first thing, even when I'm tired and I'm like, I think I messed up. And it's like, well, then mess up with prayer. Like just like, and it's not like you have to do that, because some people might say that that's too ritualistic, whatever that means. But like, that's something that I love doing. Half hour later, I am saying a lot of words that are not in the Bible. A lot of words. And then I go, hold on. Paul says I think it's in Ephesians, let nothing unwholesome come out of your mouth, lest that which is edifying. I tell myself that. Like nothing should come out of my mouth. And then a half hour later, I'm saying those same words again, but about a different thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, just like constantly like redirecting myself and, saying like, God, like help me with that, because I get so agitated about things that don't matter. Like that's what this season, I think, is like learning to be content with various circumstances while being very unsatisfied with the rate of progress. It's like both be content and be at peace, but also be invited to make a big impact and invited into work really hard. And it's like, I hate the word balance. I hate it so much. And so what I like instead of balance is holiness. And it's like, let your work be holy, let your rest be holy. And it's like, I don't think people have either. And, today's Sunday, and I've said for like the last couple of years, I'm like, what do I want Sundays to look like? Because I don't want to work on Sundays. I want to have good food with good people, go to good church, and enjoy good nature. And that's hard to do. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. But that's what I want. And maybe a good book, and maybe some good wine, but like those things especially. And I feel like Sundays roll around and it's like, I'll mess around on my phone, I'll play video games. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with those. It's like, yeah, consume more Instagram reels. Do it. But like, it's not rejuvenating. Mm-mm. It's like, that's what I want. I want things that are actually rejuvenating in people and food and nature and church. Like I feel rejuvenated, but I feel like so many people there, it's like, oh man, I'm exhausted from the weekend. It's like, oh, what'd you do? Were you out like drinking? They're like, no. It's like, what'd you do? I was like, I binge watched the show while I was on my phone. It's like, you were binge watching a show and on your phone? It's like, yeah, I'd be exhausted too. It's like, I can't do that. But I think that's what this season is. It's like, yeah, like learning to both extend those times, and it's like every half hour whenever I'm like, tripping up, bring it back. Just bring it back. Just constantly like do that. And it's hard to do. Mm-hmm. But it's like we're still alive, which can only mean one thing. I think. Maybe it means a couple. But I think that by virtue of us still being alive, that means that God has not given up on us. So then we can just keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Like let's keep going. It's like not to get too melancholic, I would have given up on me a long time ago. I can be a real piece mm-hmm. of whatever. God thinks otherwise. He's like, no, like I'm not done with you, or you're not done. And it's like, what a beautiful invitation.
When it was back to freshman year, it was like, all right, I had my sob story, and then 4 months, and then I start reading my Bible, and then things start going on the uptick. I'm like, oh, and then I feel like things are starting to progress, and then I'm like, oh, here are the answers to the questions that I've been having all this time, and that feels great. And then you run into another problem, and then another setback, and that's so easy to like look up and then ask why. It's like, hey, why is this happening? I can't seem to figure this out. And then what I've been really challenged to do is not ask why, because it's way easier to look at things in hindsight. It's way more fun to look at things in hindsight. But we don't always have that.
It's also easier.
Yeah. But when I'm currently going through a wilderness period or some kind of struggle, rather than asking why, the question I want to ask is like, all right, what do you want me to know about this current situation, and what do you want me to do about it? And then I think if I can just hone in, and that being the question that I ask, I think it's much easier to get clarity. And then most important, what I'm learning right now is it's much easier to surrender that to Christ, because that's the thing. I'm so controlling. I want everything to go right, and I want it to go my way. I think when I'm asking, like, all right, this is in your hands. Just use me in whatever means you need to. What do you want me to know about the situation? What do you want me to do about it?
Which usually, I would imagine, you don't need to know everything. Mm. Like, and that's, I think, huge, because there's sometimes where I'm like, I want to know why this specific thing happened. But I think a much better question is, what do you want me to know? Mm-hmm. That's not a question I ask. I ask, hey, why did this specific thing happen? It's like, why am I X, or why am I not Y, or why am I not Z? Like, what's going on here? And it's like, no. If I ask, I think that would really help my interior spiritual life, and also every other part of my life. If I just ask, what do you want me to know, and what do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. So I can actually make action and not just do nothing. Mm-hmm. That's huge.
I think it's a active decision every single moment to surrender it. And that's incredibly difficult, because I don't know how long those wilderness periods are going to last, or those waiting periods are not easy by any means, but I just have to trust that they are necessary for my growing and my relationship and my walk with Christ. Mm-hmm. And that's, who am I to write the script on my life? That's what I try to do all too often. And when it doesn't line up, when my script doesn't line up with what God has to say, it's so easy to shake my fist and say, oh, this isn't going according to plan. But that active decision, every single, like we're talking, I'm really good at relying on the Lord for 5 minutes, but after I close my Bible or I stop praying, it's so easy to try to take things back into my own hands. So I think on a timeline wise, it's it is a walking process. It is I don't know.
It's like, how many moments are there in a day? Infinite.
No.
So it's like, I guess we're trying to capture as many of those moments and unite in surrender. Not just like, because surrender, for those who are not theists, they might hear like, oh, that means like giving up. And it's like, well, if you're uniting with God, who is pure act, no potential, just like God is, well, then you're going to do things. And, like reframing what patience means is like, well, figuring out what to do in the meantime. I think that that's a Hermosi-ism. And it's like, And it's like, well, what can I do in the meantime while I'm waiting for my editors to get back to me, or I'm waiting for this person, or, I'm waiting for this girl to text me back. It's like, what can I do in the meantime? Not text other girls. That's not what you do. No, I don't even text girls. I don't text. Sorry. But figuring out what to do in the meantime and uniting yourself to act is huge. I want to change gears a little bit.
Oh God.
Let's say you got a 19-year-old punk. And by punk, I mean too skinny jeans, like too skinny of jeans, wears Vans, high tops, gray, Ultra Kush, and a graphic tee. He's a punk, but he wants to do something. He wants to do entrepreneurship, and he doesn't know where to start, regardless of the type of industry. Like, what do you think are some things that someone like that would need to do, regardless of all of the other circumstances? What are some things that people need to develop?
Unfortunately, the best piece of advice I can give is the same one that I kind of followed. Is like, just jump in the deep end, get right after it. You're gonna mess up. I wish somebody had told me the amount of mistakes I was gonna make early on, because I thought everything had to be perfect. But just jump in the deep end and get started. Like, practically speaking, I see so many people my age, they're like, oh, I want to start this business, and they're so concerned with getting the LLC set up and getting, like, what do I do for taxes and
what should my brand colors be?
Yeah, exactly. It's the equation's pretty simple. It's like, find a product or service, give it to somebody, and then reiterate and improve on that. And you just keep repeating that process over and over. Nice Shirt Thanks we had an LLC before we got set up, but we didn't have a bank account. We didn't have QuickBooks set up for payroll. We had 80 T-shirts, a press, and a couple of pieces of transfer paper, and a TikTok account. That was quite literally it. And I think just...
And how many designers did you have?
One. And then after like week 2, we probably had like 50 of our friends all going to town creating just garbage posts on and sending them over through. We were just emailing them back and forth, and that's how we'd print them off. So I think it is just jumping in the deep end. You'll get it figured out, and then just kind of like we were talking about earlier, just focus on progress and improvement, and then everything else theoretically fall into place.
Mm-hmm. I think that's super applicable to everybody who's not a punk. But the reason I ask is because I want to help the punks. I want to help people who still listen to Linkin Park too much. Like, those are my guys.
They're not out of reach, but...
What do you mean?
People still listen to Linkin Park. They're not out of reach, but they're on the cusp.
What are you trying to say here?
I know 2 people that listen to Linkin. I know 1.5 people that listen to Linkin Park.
Who's the other half?
Tommy, and then I'm pretty confident you do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're cooked.
Okay. Well, I think that if I'm not mistaken, I designed a few shirts for Nice Shirt Thanks. So I do think that there is a correlation between some of your best designers and to the degree that they listen to Linkin Park. Is that true?
Yeah.
So what do you mean they're too out of reach? I'm offended. And, the late Chester Bennington, God rest his soul.
Rest his soul.
He's also offended. And I know some people, they're going to scoff and they're going to say like, well, in the end, it doesn't even matter. And maybe I need to cultivate more calloused skin so that I can be numb to all of the things that are crawling in my skin from people like you who, you know, are critical of us, but that's okay. That's okay. I don't have any more Linkin Park puns off the top of my head.
Didn't realize this conversation was going to get so heavy.
Yeah, we talk about theism and God and Jesus Christ, but the heavy parts are Linkin Park.
That was a song reference to their heavy.
You're right.
And I was working my tail off to come up. You were rattling them off, and I was like, I got to get something out soon.
You're right. I listened to the first 2 albums constantly on repeat, and that was, Heavy was the one right before he passed away. But, yeah, so it's newer stuff. It's still good. It's just all different, you know, but that's okay. Regardless, I really like what you had to say, and like jumping into the deep end is so important, and something that I think back of probably multiple times a day is something that Machiavelli said, I think in The Prince, where he says, you need to make mistakes of action, not mistakes of idleness. Mm-hmm. And a better way, like some people are like, idleness, I don't, like, what do you mean? It's like, make mistakes of action instead of inaction. That is the key. And a good example of this is unrelated to business and entrepreneurship. I was at a wedding maybe a year ago, and I didn't really know anyone, but I looked good. I had a burgundy suit. I like wearing burgundy suits to weddings because everybody. Yeah, well, I think that my color palette is I'm a deep autumn.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. That's like astrology for people who like, what is it? Colors, I guess. But I think I'm a deep autumn, so I'm supposed to wear like, you know, like navy blues, like dark greens and burgundy. Like I think I look good in those. So I wear a lot of burgundy suits to weddings. Regardless of that. So, you know, if you've seen me at a wedding, I'm probably wearing a burgundy suit. I have other suits, but I like wearing them. And I didn't really know anybody, but I was dancing a ton. And according to my Apple Watch, I burned over 2,200 calories that night. It was insane.
A good wedding.
It was great. And I had a girl come up to me while I was dancing. And I've had some people say that I'm a good dancer. I was at a wedding actually not too long ago. And I had someone's abuela, Mexican grandmother, say, you're a really good dancer. And I was like, you have no idea what you've just done to me. Like, my ego was already through the roof, and now it's in outer orbit. Like, when a Mexican grandmother tells you that you're a good dancer, she's not being nice. She's being honest. But this girl, I think, was just being nice.
Okay.
Because she said, I really like your energy, which is not, I like your moves, or I think you're a good dancer. It's very different. Mm-hmm. And so she said, I like your energy. And I point to my Apple Watch, which has a workout going, and I said, I'm still dancing. And I go, and if I stop dancing, I'll die. Like it's Spy Kids 3. It's like, if you die in the game, you die in real life. If I stop dancing, it's like, or Speed, where it's like, I have to keep my heart rate up. Or, you know, it's like, if this bus goes less than 60 miles an hour, everyone will die. It's like, if I stop dancing, this whole wedding's going to blow up. Like, she didn't think that was that funny. Can you believe it? Maybe she couldn't hear me over the music.
That's what I think.
I think so. But she thought it was kind of funny. Like, she's like, but right as soon as I had said that, the photographer got a big group photo of everybody. And so got a big group photo of everybody. I don't know this girl, but she's the only person that's really talked to me that's kind of cute. And so I made sure I'm right by her during this picture, just in case we get married. I've never spoken to her or seen her since. But I was just like, just in case we could be like, oh, like that was right when we met. After that, after the group photo, the DJ took that as an opportunity to do slow dancing. So 60% of the dance floor dispersed. And I go back to my table and like no one's really there. And I see her go back to her table and she's the only one at her table. And I was like, you know what? I thought of this. I'm like, I want to make mistakes of action, not mistakes of inaction. Again, I never saw this girl ever again, but I was like, I'm going to go up to her and ask her if she wants to dance. So I go up to her and I say, hey, I need to keep dancing because if I don't, I'll die. And I don't know if you have a boyfriend, but I'd like to dance with you. And she said, oh, that's smooth. And I was like, I don't know if it's smooth, but it is I don't know, of high agency, and I danced with her, and I don't know, she lived in like Cleveland or whatever, like, you know, whatever. But I thought, like, if I don't take those kinds of opportunities, I'm going to miss out on so much of life. And that one example is just one of like many, most having nothing to do with women, where it's like most of my stories don't involve women. That's like one of 3. But I want to be someone who just does things. And like, was it scary to go up to this girl and ask her? Yeah.
But a lot more scary if you weren't a burgundy suit.
Yeah, if I wasn't in that suit, which by that it was drenched. It was soaked. And I don't perspirate. I'm not a big sweater, but when you're dancing and burning over 2,000 calories, yeah, you're gonna sweat. Mm-hmm. And I was sore for a week. Oh. It was great. Because I'm in like terrible dress shoes, like my feet hurt. It was like, you know, it's like I had to recover longer on that wedding than I did when I ran a marathon. And I injured myself when I ran that marathon. But yeah, I think that's the biggest encouragement I could ever give anyone is like, just make mistakes of action. Like if she says like, no, I have a boyfriend, great. Then the measure of success was doing the mistake. Like that's what success looks like. It's just continuing to do it. And that's another thing is like figuring out what does success looks like. I have another dance story, and this is the last dance story because I only have 2.
Okay.
I recently went swing dancing, and I don't know how to swing dance, but someone invited me. There was a group of a lot of young adults, and they were all swing dancing. And I don't know anyone. I moved to Indianapolis not too long ago, and I'm still getting to know people and just the young adult communities here. And I was like, I'll go to this. And I don't really want to go. I don't know how to swing dance, but I was in my car, and I was like, what would make this a good night? And I had 4 things. If I have one meaningful-ish conversation, if I have one snack, like a cookie, a brownie, whatever, if I have one beer or one drink, and if I have one okay dance, that was a great night. And I had so many meaningful conversations. One okay dance, one okay beer, one okay snack. But if I just went and I was like, I talked to that guy, he works in construction, and I was like, oh, he's cool. All right, cool. And I danced over there, and like it was fine. But like being able to say, what would success look like? And especially when you're new or when you're starting out, like what does success look like? And it's just like trying. Each one of those things is just trying. It's just like that's all any of us can do is just try and make mistakes. Text the girl, shoot the shot, start the business, send the email, start running. I don't know, like just try. Mm-hmm. And I think so much of my life has been not trying. And I don't know, do you feel that way, or I feel like you're built different?
No, I'd say that's coming back. I love that you're like, all right, these are the 4 requirements in order for this to be a success. So that's the same thing that I've been learning is like, all right, limit what's on the plate. Like these are the things that I need to get done for Nice Shirt Thanks. These are the 4 things that need to be accomplished in order for this to be a success. That's no, yeah, you're just.
And if you do more, you do more.
Yeah.
And you like even if you overestimate what success is, and you're like, okay, I need to pull it back. That is success. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I can't do this. How many times do you and I talk over the last 4 years where I say, this is what I'm doing? And then you're like, how is that? I'm like, oh, I changed my mind. Like, I feel like every time I talk to you on the phone, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 things that I say, this is what I am doing. And then I am not doing that thing the next time we talk. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. What's not okay is staying up till 4 a.m. playing PS1, Final Fantasy VII. It's like, why? Grow up. Go to bed. Idiot. Not you. And there's nothing wrong with, like, that's stupid. There's no reason to do that. It's like, you got stuff to do, and Final Fantasy ain't it. But it's so good. I don't know. Are you doing anything fun in your spare time?
Outside of church, the only things I've been taking upon myself are comic books. Thank you.
What are you reading?
Dude, I didn't finish the Sculptor yet, so I got to put that back on the plate.
Sculptor by Scott McCloud. I think Will Wheaton, who was on Star Trek and like a big nerd and like had a TV show and podcast. Younger guy. I think he was a kid on Star Trek, but I might be wrong. He has a Goodreads account, and he reviewed that book by Scott McCloud, and he said, "This book ripped my heart out and showed it to me." Sculptor is amazing. It sucks, and it's so good, especially for any creative person. I can't recommend it enough. Love Sculptor. So you read that, or you're reading that?
I'm reading that. I got to get back on with that one. What else am I doing for fun? I don't know. I just moved back home, so outside of trying to leave, I don't know what else has been going on.
Yeah.
No, that's about it.
Well, that's awesome, man.
Just nice shirt thanks in church.
Dude, then continue to make mistakes of action. But before we wrap up, man, I want to ask you, what is one virtue that you want to see more in the world?
Joy. I would say that's the one thing that I've been lacking by my own choice. And so I would say continuously seeking the joy of the Lord and making that decision that I'm going to be joyful every single day. And then as the Lord pours into me and fills my cup, maybe I can overflow and pour into others a little bit more. Thinking about myself less, of others more, and of Christ most. I think that's the one thing. That's the one thing that's been put on my heart, and that I've been super encouraged in that area.
Sweet. Well, I'll join you in that. I want to be more joyful. You guys, be more joyful. And thanks so much, Hayden. This was a blast.
Thank you, AJ.
Awesome. See you guys.
Fun.